Tee time for the 100th PGA Championship is on Thursday from Belle Reve Country Club in Missouri as Justin Thomas defends his maiden major win last year and looks for his second straight win after capturing the WGC Bridgestone on Sunday. We'll preview the field with in-depth player analysis, course knowledge, the latest odds, trends, championship picks, matchup picks, and we'll take a bonus look at the current Ryder Cup standings as Prime Sports Golf on Prime Sports Network starts now. All right, you're listening to Prime Sports Golf for this Tuesday, the 7th of August, with Jeff Shane, Joel Cook, Brady Cannon on the Prime Sports Radio Network. Prime Sports Golf is brought to you by ProGolfWeekly.com and Covers.com. And you can visit Covers experts at experts.covers.com. All right, so the final major of the season is upon us, Jeff, and Justin Thomas was able to do what he has done before, and we talked about that last week. He seems to be able to go through these stretches where he looks really good early in the season, goes through a little bit of a drought in the middle of the season, and then boom, here I am. And now he's what, number 2, right? He's back to number 2 behind Dustin?
He is back to number 2. So the top 3 in the world rankings are named Dustin, Justin, and Justin. But this is actually very similar to what happened last season, where he played well early, kind of went through some summer doldrums, you might say, and then right about mid-August, or early August, I should say, all of a sudden he finds his stroke, finds his rhythm, and put on an extremely strong performance in Firestone's last go-round. And considering that Firestone and Belle Reve were designed by the same guy at about the same time in his career, that bodes awful well for Mr. Thomas.
All right, so we'll talk about Justin Thomas and all the top contenders, long shot sleepers, latest odds, our championship picks, as we mentioned, and we'll also get into matchup picks in just a couple of minutes as I welcome in Brady Cannon from Covers.com. And Brady, one of the top players that, and we haven't really had to deal with too many injuries or injury concerns this season, especially recently. We've seen a lot of the top players get together in the majors and even in the big events. But Justin Rose, who's having a fantastic run, he was second going into the event last week. He's had these back issues before, so he decides to take the week off. Seemed to indicate that he should be okay after the back spasms this week, even though you never know. So that's going to be an interesting pick or player to avoid based on a guy that you have to seriously consider would be a prime top contender to win, but you do have the injury concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know really what to think with Justin Rose. He looked like a pretty darn good pick going into last week. He has good history at Firestone. And like Jeff says, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of crossover success that you can draw on between the two courses, Firestone and Belle Reve. So I guess that would make Justin Rose, a good pick for this week as well. But I'm just not sure, how the back is feeling right now. You would think over the course of 4, 5, 6, 7 days that it would be back to okay, but it's hard to bet on an unknown as well.
Yeah, so that is something to definitely keep an eye on. All right, I've got these matchups I want to go through and also get your overall pick. And but a couple things. First of all, as usual, I want to talk to you about the course itself, this Belle Reve Country Club at Town and Country in Missouri. Talk about what you have seen so far, what you know about the golf course, and hot weather this week. How does that come into play, and so forth?
Well, like Jeff was saying, there's a lot of similarities with last week's golf course. Robert Trent Jones did a massive redesign of Firestone in 1960, and in that same year, he did the design of Bellerive. And like with any artist, musician, they go through different phases in their career of creating things, and with both taking place in 1960, it's likely that the styles are very similar. And you can see that just looking at pictures and reading that they're both very long, par 70 courses. Firestone last week at 7,400 yards. This week a little bit over 7,300 yards. Both, again, par 70, tree-lined. This week probably has a little bit more dogleg in the fairways. Firestone a bit more straightforward. And then the big difference is the greens, massive greens at Bellerive. And just to give people a little perspective, these greens are about 2.5 times the size of the greens at Pebble Beach. So they are really large putting surfaces, and that is another topic of discussion this week. You mentioned the heat. They had one of the hottest months of May in the St. Louis area on record, and that really put some stress on Bellerive and its putting surfaces, and some of the guys are seeing that. Everybody's basically seeing that this week. And now the good news is it's, from what I'm hearing, more along the perimeter and the edges of the greens, and the heart of the greens are fine. And most of the players are saying that it is fine, and it's not going to be a U.S. Open type situation. But there are some issues with the greens that the players will have to deal with, and because they're so large, these guys are going to want to hit their ball close, and if you're not hitting your ball close, then you're going to be facing some three putts. So, last week with the tree line fairways and the length, total driving comes into play as a statistic that we're going to figure is going to play into having success here at Bellerive, and then getting the ball close and avoiding the three putts on these large surfaces. So those are some areas that should translate into somebody getting near the top of the leaderboard this week.
Do you buy into, like on the Golf Channel yesterday, they were talking about how players with draws in their swing, they could benefit on this golf course. Any of that you're going to buy into? Any particular type of golfer you do believe? You've already mentioned Justin Rose, and Jeff mentioned Justin Thomas. But besides the comparison to Firestone, any other type of golfer that you think should have an advantage?
I think it's going to probably cater to the bombers a little bit more so than the short knockers, just because of the length. And over the course of the weekend, the course should dry up a little bit. Some rain expected here early in the week. You could see, again, a very similar pattern to what we saw at Firestone, where the scores were low on Thursday. But as it dries out a little bit, that should lead to an advantage for the longer hitters. It certainly makes sense that this course is going to favor a little bit of a draw ball flight. There's only one hole, really, that dog legs the other direction. But, I don't think it's as pronounced as something like Augusta, where we've seen that really play out. Again, I think it'll be more, variety like we saw last week at Firestone, where guys that can hit the ball in either direction are going to be just fine.
All right, let's go ahead and get into these matchups then. I want to get both of you guys' input, and let's see what I've got 5. Now, these are tournament matchups, so and most of these are pretty even as far as the odds are concerned. So I'll start with you, Jeff, because the last time we did this for the Open Championship, right? And Brady, you hit 4 out of 5. Right?
Yeah, I know. I knock on wood. I was pretty good with the last one you gave us.
All right, so let's see if we can do just as well here. Jeff, I'll start you off with Koepka and Jason Day. Koepka is a very slight favorite over Day, -120 to -110. So it's relatively, again, most of these are pretty much even. So Koepka or Day, tournament, who did you go with?
That's a good one because they're extremely similar in style. One's the U.S. Open champion, one's a former PGA champion. I like Koepka's consistency just a little bit better. His putting, I think, is better than Jason Day right now, even though Day has really stepped up his putting here in the past several months. But I'll lean towards Koepka in this situation.
Brady?
Well, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with Jason Day. You know, Brooks Koepka really seems to have emerged as a U.S. Open specialist, and Jason Day just may be a PGA Championship specialist. You know, he's won the thing, of course, and he also won at the Wells Fargo this year, which was last year's venue for the PGA Championship. So he seems to have a real affinity for this type of setup. I thought he was a real good bet last week at Firestone, and just had really the one hiccup on Sunday, and then on Saturday he just couldn't find a fairway. If he can get his driver straightened out and hitting his tee shot in the fairway this week, he's going to be really tough.
Yeah, Jason Day has a very good record also at the PGA Championship, even though they have played here for the first time. Let's go to the second matchup for the tournament. Brady, you go first here. And Francesco Molinari is a minus 125 to 105 favorite over Tiger Woods.
Oh, boy. I'm not really thrilled about either guy here this week. Molinari, we saw fade a little bit, off of his first major championship win at the Open, and I rightly so. I'd be pretty excited and experiencing a little bit of a celebratory hangover, if you will, going into the following start. Yeah. And he's never done that great at Firestone anyway. I'd probably go with Tiger. I mean, it's not a bad price on Woods there. Of course, he has tremendous success, or history rather, at Firestone. And if Bellerive's anything like Firestone, it ought to play into Tiger's hands as well. And it did not so much for Francesco, and hasn't over his visits to Firestone in the past either. So I'd probably take the plus 105 on Woods.
All right. Jeff, four-time PGA champ Tiger against Francesco Molinari off his first major win a few weeks ago, and also runner-up at the PGA last year. Who would you go with?
Yeah, and that's the thing that occurred to me is Francesco had his chances last year, and I think he's becoming a better major player. And just right now, especially after last week, I can see Tiger not winning, because it's tough to win, especially when you got to get through Dustin Johnson and Justin Thomas and those guys. But his fade on the weekend was a red flag for me, and so I'm going to take the guy who I hope is not going through, kind of that emotional letdown after his win, but I'm more confident in Francesco Molinari's consistency than I am in Tiger Woods right now.
All right, Jeff, then you got a completely even matchup between Thorbjorn Olesen and Kyle Stanley. Who would you go with?
I think I would have to go with Olesen. I like the way that he's come back this year, although I've also been quite impressed with Stanley, and you can see that in my picks. But I think Olesen is a little bit better of a big ballpark player. Stanley has done extremely well at Firestone, at Memorial, and things like that, but it does kind of run against his type. I can see why this is even. I'm going to lean toward Thunder Bear.
All right, and Brady, you've got Stanley coming off the runner-up last week, and then you've got Olesen, who's got 5 top 15s in his last 7, including a win. Who would you go with?
Well, just to completely perplex the listeners even more so, I have to go opposite of Jeff, right?
To keep it going, yes.
No, I mean, this one is absolutely a toss-up, and I definitely concur with, Jeff's reasoning. I think Olesen is probably the better overall player, certainly the better player on a world stage and for these, major, events, if you will. But I definitely think the golf course plays very well into Kyle Stanley's hands, and he's probably the better ball striker of the two. Boy, that one's very, very difficult. Gosh, it would be an absolute pass for me. I'm sorry, I just can't really put my finger on who I would take out of those two.
All right, and by the way, let's keep in mind, not only did Stanley finish second last week, Olesen finished third with a 64 on Sunday. All right, let's see. Then Brady, Casey, and Noren also even. Steven, who would you go with?
Boy, I'd probably take Casey. Because of his history at Firestone, he's done very well there. The bad part is he doesn't have a great history in the PGA Championship. He's not a great putter typically, and putting, there could really be a focus on putting this week. So, that could expose some guys, and Noren is certainly the better putter. I would probably just lean a little bit with Casey there. And you said that was an even price matchup as well?
Correct.
Yeah. If one of them was a heavy underdog, I'd probably go that way. But being even, Steven, I would probably just lean a little bit with Casey just due to experience in this setting and on this type of course.
Jeff?
We're probably not going to help the listeners at all because I am leaning toward Noren being a little bit better player. He seems to step up his game on some of the bigger stages. And not that Casey doesn't. Remember that Casey had a chance to win the FedEx Cup last year, even though he hadn't managed to win a tournament. He's always there. But I think Noren might be the better play on this type of course. As well as Casey has played at Firestone, his PGA championship record is a red flag.
And then the last one, Jeff, is Fowler, a very slight favorite against Jon Rahm, minus 120 to 110. Two players who have had but they've had a very similar type of issue in majors. Rahm just can't do anything in majors except the Masters this year, where Ricky just can't really close the deal on most of these majors. So who would you go with?
Yeah, two guys. This really is kind of a contrast because Ricky seems like he's always there until it gets to Sunday, and Rahm is Mr. All or Nothing. At a place like Bellerive, that's set up more like a PGA Tour event, so not an Open of either type, which would probably put a little bit of a restrictor on Rahm. This may be a little bit of a Hail Mary pick, but my gut tells me Jon Rahm in this case.
Brady?
Well, continuing the trend, I'm going with Fowler. And I agree with Jeff. I mean, Rahm has the ability to just bring a golf course to its knees with his power and his length, and that could happen here. And he made a nice little run on the weekend at Firestone. But he just doesn't seem to show up in the majors, really hasn't yet. Had a nice finish this year at the Masters, but he was my pick. I'm not sure if I mentioned it on the show, but I really liked him for the British Open. And going into the weekend, he looked, really set up for a lot of success.
Yeah.
Just the way he had the draw with the wind and the rain and the conditions, it looked perfect for Jon Rahm. And he went out and just blew up on Friday afternoon and ended up missing the cut, which was the strangest thing I've seen in a while out of him. Especially coming in after a couple of really good finishes in Europe. So I just don't know what to make of Jon Rahm in the majors right now. I would side with Ricky.
All right, and since you guys you've split them all up, so I'll get Joel's opinion and see if he could break the tie when he calls in a few minutes. All right, so Brady, give us your pick. Who's your pick to win the PGA Championship?
Well, I think I'm going to go with Rory McIlroy. I mentioned Jason Day, in that matchup with Koepka, and he really is, I believe, primed for this championship and does well on this type of setup, and there's a lot of history there. But I think I'm leaning a little bit with McIlroy, who, of course, has won 2 PGAs. He was in the final pairing last weekend at Firestone, and it's worth noting 4 of the last 6 PGA champions have come from one of the final 2 pairings on Sunday at Firestone. So Rory checks that box. And he also seems to be a real, not necessarily Robert Trent Jones, but Trent Jones and Reese Jones specialist. If you look at courses where he has fared well, they've all been designed or redesigned by either Reese or Robert Trent. And you're talking about Firestone and Congressional and East Lake and what he did at the Ryder Cup at Hazeltine, and actually finished 3rd there in 2009 in the PGA, and that's a Robert Trent Jones design. So McIlroy just seems to have a real affinity for a course that is built by these 2 guys. And with what he has come off of last week, he fell off a course on Sunday, and that's a little bit for concern, and he did that at the Masters as well. But if Rory is driving the golf ball the way he is capable of, he's better than anybody in the world. And I'm going with him this week at somewhere in the neighborhood of 12-1.
All right. And what about a long shot? Not that we get many at the PGA Championship. The last 6 years, the biggest long shot was Jimmy Walker as the 48th ranked player in the world back in 2016 at the time. And then you got to go back to 2011 when Keegan Bradley was 108. And we had that run of 2 of 3 with Y.E. Yang and Bradley in 09 and 2011. But for the most part, we get some of the top players will stick out at the PGA Championship over the years, or at least since 2012. So, but if you did think about somebody maybe outside the top 30 or 40 in the rankings, who would you go with?
Yeah, you're right. In the last 10 years, 7 of the last 10 winners of the PGA Championship have been in the top 25 in the world rankings, so not many from far off the pack. But a guy that I think is worth a shot this week, and I was able to find him at 200-1. I've seen him down since to more like 125-1, but that's Aaron Wise. And we talked about total driving, and Aaron Wise, displayed that total driving is certainly a strength of his. He ranks 12th on tour, and that translated into a 6th-place finish last week at Firestone. He also putts very well, and he does have a win earlier this season, which is a common theme you'll see in guys that have won the PGA Championship. 16 of the last 19 have had a win during the season, and of course Wise won the Byron Nelson back in May. And this is a funny little trend here for you, which doesn't mean much of anything, but the last 2 major championship winners at Bellerive in 1965, Gary Player, and 1992, Nick Price, both from the South Africa area, and that's where Aaron Wise was born, too. So maybe that trend continues as well.
All right. Wise, with that 6th-place finish last week, his first, he would have played on the weekend anyway, no miscut at the WGC, but his first result other than a miscut since the win at the Byron Nelson. And that happens. We all know that happens with players, young players that win their first go-around on the PGA Tour. It takes a while to kind of get things going again, and maybe the result last week will get his game going this week. So very interesting long shot. Aaron Wise, 125-1 right now, Brady. What are you going to be doing for the PGA Championship? You're going to be hanging around any of the casinos in Vegas?
Well, no, I'll probably be working away here, making tee times, and watching on my couch when I can. But always a fun week, the final major of the year, and then we roll right into the playoffs, and golf season is nearing the end, and we start gearing up for football. So it never ends out here in Vegas.
Brady Cannon, Regional Manager of TeaTimesUSA.com and WithCovers.com. Thanks a lot for joining us. Best of luck watching the big major event this week. We'll talk to you next time.
You bet, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks, Brady. That's Brady Cannon. And coming up, Joel Cook from ProGolfWeekly.com. So we'll get Joel's input on his matchup picks. By the way, this is an even wager too, Jeff. Will there be a hole-in-one by anybody at the PGA Championship this week? Yes or no?
I'll say no, because they have some extremely long par threes. And particularly if it's been a hot summer, it may be tougher to hold the greens with some of those longer irons. So especially being it's a 50-50 matchup, I'm going to lean toward no.
All right. So Joel Cook is joining us now. And Joel, you ready for those matchups?
Sure.
All right. So go ahead and quickly give us, and again, most of them are even. So tournament matchups, Koepka Day.
I like Day quite a bit better. Koepka came back. He led the field in strokes gained approach last week, which is helpful. But Day's just so dialed in at these PGAs. Even last year, he was considered to be his down year, and it was mostly just one really, really bad hole that stopped him from being in competition late till Sunday. He can play those bunkers incredibly. Great short game. That's who I like Day better this week.
Day, okay. Molinari, the slight favorite over Tiger.
That's a little closer. I have Tiger. I I was disappointed with how little he played, or how poorly he played on the weekend. But he looked like, well, I was about to say he looked like he was on a mission at the Open, and Molinari, I guess, was even more so. And now that I'm saying this, I'm kind of talking myself into Molinari a little bit.
You could pass on this if you'd like.
I'm going to change my mind.
Now you tell us.
I have been pretty close on my rankings on Pro Golf Weekly. I have my top 30 this week. I have Molinari 7th and Tiger 9th. No, Tiger 10th.
Wow. Okay. So
Molinari by a small amount. He just looked too good, even though last week was kind of uninspired.
Okay.
I'm sure he's been living it up in the last 2 weeks.
Olesen Stanley, and that's an even matchup.
I like Olesen better. He's just coming in, I think, with some more momentum. I know Stanley is someone who is going to be able to keep it in the fairways. But his major history is just awful. I don't think he's even has his best finish ever in a major was a T39. We're just seeing a lot
worried
more
about that too.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more from Thorborn lately.
Yep.
Actually, it's him ranked 17th this week. No, yeah. I have him 18th, and Stanley 30B.
Okay. Casey Noren, another even matchup.
Definitely Noren. Casey looks like he might be broken to me ever since what happened to him at the Travelers, where that tournament was just handed to him on a silver platter, and he was just vintage late round Casey. And he hasn't looked that good in the last few since.
Is that another way for saying Casey the choker or something like that? Was that just?
I would say he's a choker. I don't trust where he is mentally. Even he had a 7th place finish at the Porsche event, but that wasn't a very strong field. And even that one, he opened up with 3 straight 69s and has 73 on the last day. I think he's broken right now. I wouldn't touch him.
All right, and then Fowler Rahm, even matchup pretty much. Fowler the slight favorite.
I like Fowler better. He's obviously going to have more urgency to win this. I think on a tighter course, I think he's going to be able to keep himself together a little better emotionally. We've talked about Fowler's problems closing. Rahm's been doing the same thing lately too. Rahm's got his his first round average is second on tour. He drops all the way down 132nd for fourth rounds. And just the way he looked in the last 2 majors, not that I feel super comfortable with either, but I would say Fowler by a pretty considerable amount. Okay,
sounds good. Now, as far as trends before we get into the picks, Jeff, and we had talked about this before in previous shows, and they've continued this season, where we're getting a lot of first-time major winners, including the last 3 PGA champions, right?
That's right. Justin Thomas, we know, is was a first-timer last year, but before that it was Jimmy Walker, and before that Jason Day's one and only major took place at Whistling Straits. So we're running on a streak of 3 consecutive first-timers at the PGA, and if you expand it to all major championships, 11 of the past 15 major winners, and that goes back 4 years. So this being the 16th, that will go back 4 full years. 11 of the past 15 have been first-timers. Patrick Reed and Francesco Molinari fitting that category this year. There's only 4 exceptions. 2 of them are Jordan Spieth, who's trying to complete the career Grand Slam this week. Brooks Koepka, obviously, when he repeated as U.S. Open champion, and Zach Johnson when he won at St. Andrews in 2015.
The PGA's had the most of that, too. 7 of the last 9 are first-time winners, and both of the ones that weren't were both Rory.
Okay, interesting. So we'll get into that. Use that as part of our formula to make our picks for sure, and you can do that at home yourself. Let's see. How about there is one big group that will tee off on Thursday and Friday. What other groups? Give us the top groups in general, Jeff, that we should be keeping an eye on for Thursday.
Have them.
We've got Thomas.
Me. Joel,
we've got Thomas, Tiger, and who are they with? Thomas and Tiger, Joel?
Oh, shoot, I know this.
Either of you guys know? You guys haven't been watching TV the last couple of days. I think it's Rory. It might be Rory.
Yeah, it's Rory.
Yeah, so it's Rory, Tiger, and Justin Thomas. So, and it's funny that Rory's in the group like this. Isn't Rory the one that complained at the U.S. Open? Right? Remember? He was the one that complained about being in a big group, that he thought it was, I don't know exactly how he put it.
Yeah,
but
something like that. I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but I do remember something of that nature.
And so he winds up with the biggest pairing for the first round at the PGA Championship. So I don't know if you guys have noticed any other top pairings, but that was, and I don't know, do we know when they're going to be teeing off? Thursday, Friday?
That group is a 7:23 a.m. tee time on Thursday, quarter to 3 on Friday.
Okay.
So
the Friday afternoon. Okay, that makes sense.
And of course, at the PGA, and they're going to have to change this up next year in the new times or the new calendar slot. But the PGA traditionally has put the 3 current year major winners together. So you do have Patrick Reed, Brooks Koepka, and Francesco Molinari all together. Their tee time is Thursday afternoon at 2:15, and then they'll go shortly before 9 a.m. on Friday.
Okay. Well, that actually I can't, to tell you the truth, that's not going to be the type of blockbuster group that you would normally get out of your first 3 major winners, marketing-wise, but interesting. Okay. And then we're going to have...
you might be more interested in Phil Mickelson, Jason Day, and Keegan Bradley.
Yeah, Bradley sure damages that one, but okay. It might be worth it if Phil continues to dance. That might work. As far as now, coverage is going to be is TNT, right? TNT's got the coverage.
Yes.
Correct. Thursday and Friday, and early on the weekend.
And their coverage, though, is not. Who had the U.S. Open again?
That was Fox.
Fox and Fox Sports 1.
That was Fox. Okay, so they're not going to have as much coverage though as Fox did. And I don't know if that's a tournament thing. It's still a lot of coverage. I mean, what is it, like 6 hours, I believe, on Thursday and Friday?
Correct.
Okay, whereas Fox was almost doing like everything. That was the Open Championship, right? Not the U.S. Open, the Open Championship. They had both, right? The Open?
No.
Or they didn't. Who had the Open?
And
Golf Channel? And the NBC?
I might be thinking of a different tournament.
Okay.
The CBS has this week's.
So Golf Channel and the NBC was showing everything. And I'm pretty sure there was a lot of coverage. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is actually what? I mean, the Masters, you're going to get the least. But I'm pretty sure that Fox had a lot of coverage, too. I think they might have had more coverage than TNT. Still 6 hours, so there's nothing wrong with that. But bottom line is because of that, though, I guess we don't. There's no chance to see the premier group on Thursday morning. So you got to be in Missouri to do that, right? Unless you're going to watch it on it's possible you can pick it up on the internet.
You can. Yeah, I'm sure that there are enough streaming options these days.
Yeah.
To find to plant yourself in front of your laptop or your cell phone and watch a lot of that. The live stream, if you bear with me a second, I'm getting it up on the getting it up on my screen here. But yeah, the live streaming on PGA Championship.com, or I'm sorry, PGA.com, and then you go to the PGA Championship portal. The live streaming does begin at 8:30 a.m. So you can get a heck of a lot of morning play by planting yourself in front of your laptop.
All right, sounds good. Now we've got our picks for the week. Jeff, you've got the first pick. And, of course, you cannot take Justin Thomas after Justin Thomas came through for me. And you know what kind of year you're having making picks when Justin Rose withdraws from the event and Justin Thomas moves into my pick category. I'm sure you like that, right, Joel?
Yeah.
And so what am I up to now, Jeff?
10, I think.
Honestly, I had not calculated that this week. I'm still licking the wound about the fact that Justin Rose dropped out and Justin Thomas moved in. I picked up on that about midday Friday.
All right. And that's why we do alternates, ladies and gentlemen, even in the big events. Because Dustin Johnson / Justin Rose type injuries will occur before tee time, and we've got backup plans. So, of course, we've never experienced 2 withdrawals from the same group before that I can recall, but hopefully that won't happen, so we won't have to add another pick to our resume each week. Anyway, so Jeff, you got the first pick, and Dustin Johnson is the favorite right now at 8-1. Then you've got Rory at 12-1, Justin Thomas at 14-1, Spieth, Day, Koepka at 20-1, Fowler Rose 22. And I asked Brady about Justin Rose and his injury situation. Anything from you guys? Have we heard anything this week regarding Justin Rose, and is it just going to be hit or miss with the back spasms again?
I haven't heard anything, but I mean, he could. All he need to do is go to Akron, take one shot, and then hang out the rest of the week. He would have left with $50,000. Yes, figure he was pretty, at least something.
Now my pick wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably why he did it.
Yeah,
that's just plain devil's
advocate. He's not going to do that. So yeah, you haven't heard anything, right, Jeff?
I think that last week was very much precautionary. He felt something, and I think he could have gone.
Yeah.
But knowing that the PGA Championship follows immediately, and what's your career measured by? Major championships. Sure. I think that he was not going to risk anything at Firestone and just make sure that he was ready or is ready for Bellerive. And if you remember, it was 2 years ago this month, maybe even this week, that, remember, he was having the back issues all through summer of 2016, and then he shows up in Rio and wins a gold medal. So I think he's learned very well how to manage the issues with his back.
All right. I mean, he's definitely got to be somebody that, I mean, look, without the injury, he's going to get chosen on this show. I still think he should be chosen. So he's worth a shot, especially that with the injury concerns, he is 22-1. You take the injury concerns away, and he's got to be like 16 or 14-1. So you're definitely getting better odds based on the injury status, and it's probably worth a gamble by one of us. All right, Jeff, so you get the first pick. Who are you going to take?
Well, to me, it really came down to 3 players, and Justin Thomas is off the board, so it comes down to 2. And Brady mentioned it when he was on, that Rory McIlroy has had a couple of issues with finishing late, both last week when he was in the final group and at Augusta National. And I look at Dustin Johnson's record, and of course he did miss the cut at Carnoustie, but all of his other most 4 recent starts have been top 3, and 2 of them have been wins. And it's hard to ignore that. It is a big ballpark. He's going to be able to hit it, 330, 350, whatever it is, play a lot of wedges into greens and play it close. And his putting is good enough these days. And it's in a field that I think is very evenly matched. Dustin Johnson's numbers stand out just a little bit more than everybody else. DJ, it's, 12-1?
8-1.
8-1.
Yeah.
Darn. Okay.
Well, 8-1, though, for Dustin is still not bad. He's the only single-digit player in the field. Last week he was 6-1. So the odds are up a little bit, so that's not bad. And I'll tell you right now, I was 50-50 myself on taking Dustin Johnson if you didn't take him, or going with Justin Thomas again. And so I'll take Justin Thomas. You just made my pick much easier.
Okay.
But I would have had, my pick was coming down to the wire. I don't know what I would have said if you wouldn't have taken Dustin Johnson. So I agree with you. I like Dustin Johnson's chances this week. He's got 1 major. He's overdue for a second. and he's playing real well. Dialed in over the weekend last weekend. Not surprisingly, he got off to a slow start after winning the week before. And again, yes, you would think that the golf course should also fit his eye. So, but I'll take Justin Thomas. Why not? He's capable of winning in spurts. And we'll go with Justin Thomas at 14-1 as my top pick, Joel. So DJ and Justin Thomas are off the board. Who are you going to go with, Joel?
Well, like Jeff, for me, it's down to Rory or DJ. They're kind of 1A, 1B for me, and Rory being there. I'm going to go with him. A little concerned that he had another fourth round. Things didn't go too well for him, but he's showing a lot more consistently lately. All of a sudden, I loved how the Open Championship he had rounds. He went 69, 69, 70, 70. He's been tremendous at the PGA before. I think the course fits him tremendously. I'm confident he'll avoid that big number and get back into the mix. I like him a lot this week.
All right. So both of you guys deciding between DJ and Rory. And also Brady took Rory. So we'll see if Rory can get a third PGA championship after sixth place finish last week. All right, Jeff, you are next. The top three players, odds-wise, are off the board. So that leaves Jordan Spieth and Day and Koepka as the next group up at 20-1 before we get into Fowler, Rose, and Rahm and others.
And I'm going to stay, kind of toward the top of the group there. Again, I've become very impressed with the way Brooks Koepka plays major championships, and he is a very underrated putter, and I think you're going to need that this week at Bellreeve. It's quite an ask for a guy like Koepka or anybody to win two majors in a year, but Jordan Spieth has done it. We've seen Rory do it. Koepka, he may be moving toward that kind of elite level, and so with the second pick, I'll throw it to Brooks Koepka.
All right, Brooks Koepka at 20-1. Jeff's second pick. All right, I'm going to go ahead then and grab Justin Rose at 22-1. Hope he was my top pick last week, so why wouldn't I go back to him this week, with the exception of the back injury? But I agree with Jeff. I think precautionary measures, at least that's what I'm hoping for. And if he doesn't feel right, I hope he decides to make sure he doesn't tee it up. So I can go with my next alternate. But anyway, Justin Rose will be my second pick. And he's just having way too good of a season. And you would think he's got a big one, a big victory in him, even though he could still win the FedEx Cup playoffs. And that's possible. All right, so Joel, you are next. Who would you go with, Koepka or Rose?
Between Koepka and Rose, I like Rose just a little bit better. You're getting a little more of reward with the risk with his back to just a shot maker's course, and Rose has really been tremendous with the shot making in his iron game lately. I do like him a little better.
All right, who are you going to go with, Joel? Right now, Spieth and Day at 20-1, Fowler 22-1, and Rahm at 25-1 are the top picks left on the board.
I'm going to go with Team Sunday Meltdown here and go with Jason Day. I was talking about him earlier. He's just been so tremendous in this event. Even last year, he was pretty much just one really bad hole. He's got the length to put to contend there. His short game is the best in the world right now. He's a phenomenal bunker player, and there's bunkers everywhere down there. I think he's mature enough to not let what happened down the stretch last week really get to him. I think he's going to be really confident this week.
Yeah, very good PGA Championship player, and he's been playing pretty good. He's got 3 straight top 20s coming into the event. Okay, Jeff, who would you go with, Day or Rose?
I think just considering that we don't know for sure with Justin Rose's back, and Day is a PGA Championship kind of player, I think I'd probably have to go with Day.
All right, Jeff, you're up next. Spieth, Fowler, Rahm, and then you've got Woods, Fleetwood, Molinari, Reed, Finau. And those are the only players left on the board before we get to the long shots, unless you want to dive into any long shots right now.
No, not at this point. Actually, this is going to go right back to the opening segment with Brady, because I've set Jordan Spieth aside between the pressure of trying to win the career Grand Slam and just the issues that he's having confidence-wise right now. He's off my board. So it comes down to Ricky Fowler and Jon Rahm, and I've already made that decision. My gut tells me Jon Rahm.
Trying to capture his first major and also deal with the pressure that apparently he's had some issues with in major play before. So Jon Rahm at 25-1. Jeff looking, he's got his first player on his board without a major. We talked about the major trend right now. And a matter of fact, he's the first player off the board, period. As far as all of us. We've all got major winners, except Jon Rahm.
You noticed that too.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to continue that with my next pick. But then again, that's going to happen a little bit more anyway, because we've taken up pretty much all the top guys. So I'll go with, I'm going to go back to Fleetwood again at 28-1. And Tommy had the lead going into the weekend last week, played awful on Saturday, didn't really recover much on Sunday, but he does have 3 straight top 15s heading into this event. So he's playing pretty good golf, and we just need to see whether or not he can put it all together in a major. So Tommy Fleetwood at 28-1 will be my pick for pick number 3. Joel, who would you go with, Fleetwood or Rahm?
Definitely Fleetwood. Neither have been super consistent lately. Fleetwood always has that one good round and kind of fades off the rest of the way. He looks closer to pulling through in one of these. Rahm just looks a little disjointed right now, I think.
All right. Can I make your pick, Joel?
Possibly. It's a pick I've made a lot on this show.
Tony Finau.
Actually, no.
No. Wait, let me go ahead with another one in.
Close.
Xander Schauffele.
That's not it either.
Wow.
We'll get Xander next round.
That could be it, yes. We'll have to steal him from you.
I actually am going to wander into the long shots a little bit this week.
Okay.
I'm going to take a guy I often hype up on the show. I do not understand how Henrik Stenson's 50-1 this week. He basically and maybe I just take the stats too seriously, but everything you need for this tournament, he has extremely well then. He ranks first in greens and regulation. He's second in driving accuracy, but the only guy ahead of him is Ken Duke, who hits it like 100 yards per drive. Stenson leads averages 285. He's first in scrambling from 10 to 20 yards, first 3-putt avoidance, which is big this week, third in par 4 scoring, third in bogey avoidance. I know it's a little bit of risk. He had a little bit of an elbow issue going into the Open, but considering he played there and he played at Akron all 4 rounds last week, I think he's fine. He's also been great in this event before. 5 top 7 finishes in his last 8 starts at the PGA, and only one of his last 8's been outside the top 25.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing, though, is I guess the reason he's 50-1, you got the last 2 results have also kind of coincided with the injury issue he had before that, right, Jeff?
Yeah, he's been nursing the elbow all summer, and before that, he just seems to be going through a real spate of nagging things because he had the knee problem back in the spring. That doesn't seem to be talked about anymore. I don't know if that's just still around, but taking a back seat to the elbow. I think the elbow is probably the bigger concern, and I would have to imagine that the elbow is the only reason he's not somewhere at least in the 30s.
All right, let's now go with our official long shot. These are players 50-1 or higher. And the players that start our long shot category include players like Patrick Cantlay. Stenson is off the board now. Bubba Watson. You have Alexander Noren, Paul Casey, Xander Schauffele, and many others. But those are the guys that are right around the 50-1 category, 55-1. So you going to take any of those guys, or you got someone else, Jeff?
No, actually, I'm going to take the first guy you mentioned off that board. I think Patrick Cantlay, even though it's been since the fall since he has won, I think he's become a lot more comfortable in his own shoes, and he's playing pretty well on big stages. Firestone, first time last week, tied for 6th, 4 top 15s in his last 5 starts. We know how good he can be. Remember how well he played back in 2011 when he was low amateur at the U.S. Open and shot 60 at the Travelers Championship, and he had to go through the injuries. He had to go through the emotional issues with seeing his best friend and caddy killed by hit-and-run driver. It seems like he's now been able to push through all of that. He's really starting to play consistently well. He's not a bomber per se, but you know what? He's long enough. I kind of like Cantlay this week.
Yeah, I mean, Cantlay was definitely one of my top 2 or 3 long shot plays as well. I think he is. I mean, I worry a little bit about the experience factor, but we know the talent's there, and we also look, as we said before regarding other players that have won a while back. I mean, you could bring up like Keegan Bradley. You know, I mean, it happens. You get guys, and I'm not saying Cantlay ranking-wise is where Bradley was, but you get players that just don't have a lot of experience, and sometimes it just all comes together. So it's not like it hasn't happened before. And Cantlay is a player talent-wise that can definitely, I mean, this could change his career for sure. He's trending in the right direction, and that's why he's sitting there right on the edge. A lot of respect for him to be sitting there at 50-1 with some other good players like Stenson and Watson. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, though, and grab, I'll tell you what, I'll grab Olesen. It's been a while since I've taken Olesen, but he certainly is playing as well as we've seen him play in a while. His ranking is now at 40. He's never finished a year at 40 or inside the top 50. He reached 50 in 2012, but as we mentioned before, 5 top 15s in his last 7. That includes a win, a second, third last week after a 64 on Sunday, and so 12th at the Open Championship, too. So he played well at the major, the last one, so I'll take Olesen as my official long shot at 75-1. Joel, who are you going to go with as your long shot?
Well, Olsen, I had him last week, and that's someone I was definitely considering here. Yeah, I'm going to go with a different guy I had last week. He didn't do quite as well finishing 3rd. I think he finished around 200th right after Sean McKeel and Michael Campbell. But Xander Schauffele, I can't pass. He's just too much of a big game player. And we're just a few weeks removed from a great runner-up performance at the Open. He shows up for majors. Just seems to love this environment. Plus, he's kind of on that periphery of the Ryder Cup too. So I think he's going to have some more motivation there. 66-1. He's not going to be intimidated by anyone out there. I'm going to hope last week. I don't know what happened to him last week, but I'm going to look past it.
Well, like you said, I mean, he has shown the ability to come up big in big events, so he doesn't have to be trending in to a major to play well or a big event. And so why not go with him right now? He was definitely under my consideration as well in that grouping. And so absolutely, Xander Schauffele at 60-1 is somebody you have to consider. Okay, Jeff, back to alternates now. As we saw last week, alternates matter. So Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, John Rahm. Who are you going to go with as your number 1 alternate? And by the way, the players left are Spieth, Fowler, and Woods, Molinari, Reed, and Finau. I think that's it, right?
I think that's right. Yeah, it's still a pretty good group. And,
sure.
Looking at the three that I was considering, two of them have a major, one doesn't. So I'm going to go kind of the PGA championship route with a guy that doesn't. And most cases, he's usually in the main board. But I'll make Ricky Fowler my alternate.
Ricky Fowler at 22-1. Did you have him last week?
I did.
Okay. So Fowler, who was I don't know what he was doing last week. Yeah, he was great. Oh, he back to being old Ricky. Then he's great. Yeah, back to being old Ricky. I mean, he was just all over the place last week. But if he could just figure out a way to avoid those really bad days, then he can be there. He's got the talent. Let's keep in mind he doesn't have a top five since the runner-up at the Masters, fifth last year at the PGA Championship. He does have a couple of top fives in PGA Championship play, and maybe Ricky could do it because you know what, he is flying under the radar. You know, I think many people just aren't. I think they've kind of okay. You know, so let's just if we're going to slam him, we'll slam him at the end of the year or something. But nobody's even talking about it. To tell you the truth, I think there's just so many other players to talk about, let alone to get on Ricky's case for not being able to win another major. But he's got one more chance before the talk continues for Ricky Fowler. And when is he going to win a major? So we'll see if he can get it done this week. All right. You know what? I'm going to go with the other guy in that list that doesn't have a major. I'm going to go with your boy, Joel, Tony Finau, 9th at the Open Championship, 5th at the U.S. Open, 10th at the Masters. So he's played really well at the majors this year. 10th last week. He's playing pretty well in general. It's a course that we talked about that could benefit the power players. So I'll take him at 40-1. And
He looks good lately.
And considering that you only have Spieth, Woods, Molinari, Reed to play with, you could go into duplicate territory if you wanted to, Mr. Joel.
A little tempted by Reed, but I'm going to go with Spieth. It's a major. He kind of has only showed up once in the last 3 months, but again, the same issue with Schauffele. He loves this environment. The PGA is the one he said he'd have the most trouble winning, but he's going to have. I think he can deal with that pressure. We'll see if he gets into the mix, whether he collapses on Saturday or Sunday again. But
look, we talked about this before with Spieth, and it happened. We talked about it after. Remember, we talked about how after he lost at the Open Championship, and it just seemed to be there were excuses. Excuses. I'm playing better than you think. I feel like I'm playing well. I'm doing well. Things are going great. He's trying to convince himself. That's what he's doing. He's trying to convince himself that everything's okay, that I'm doing well. And he actually had the nerve when he was interviewed yesterday to say, regarding last week, I don't play well at Bridgestone. That was his excuse. Jordan, you actually do play well at Bridgestone. Compared to other players, you've had top 10s at Bridgestone. So what are you talking about? It's like he's trying to convince himself, Jeff, that I'm doing okay. And that's okay. So that's how sometimes you got to do it. You got to have so much confidence in your ability that you don't want any negative thoughts to enter into your head. But we're not buying it. I mean, I'm sorry. You had a couple of decent rounds of the Open Championship. That's it. You just have not played well for months.
And I think part of it, too, is, and all golfers go through this, I'm hitting the ball really well. If the ball is more or less doing what I'm asking it to do, I can't turn it into a score. Usually that has to do with short game or putting. And I think Jordan may be going through a little bit of that right now, where his game really isn't that isn't that off, but the short game or the putting, and his putting is way down this year, way down the list. There's some minute thing in the putting that is causing misses, and the misses is affecting his confidence. And that's where I see his issue, and he's probably striking the ball fine. But the putting is just off. And we've seen guys, make a half-inch adjustment in their address position on the greens, and all of a sudden everything goes in. I think that's probably where Jordan Spieth is. He just hasn't found that little trigger yet. And there's certainly a possibility he could find it on the greens anywhere. But, specifically Bellerive this week, it would not surprise me. But right now, his confidence is really being going through a struggle because of the putting issue. There's also one thing, maybe you guys have noticed it too, with Jordan. He is an odd year guy. He played well in 2013, earned his PGA Tour card, won twice, and everybody's thinking, and Jordan Spieth's going to really explode on the scene. Flat in 2014. 2 majors in 2015, almost a third. Flat in 2016. Another major in 2017, although it wasn't quite as spectacular as 2013 and 2015. Here we are in 2018, we haven't seen much out of him. It's hard to explain why, but here we are.
All right. Well, we'll be sure to take him quite a bit in 2019. I mean, 2019.
Exactly.
But we he better start getting some top 5s or top 10s before any of us touch him again. But maybe you get lucky in the alternate category, Joel, if he just goes out there and wins. The only thing is that I think the only thing for me, too, are the odds. The fact that he's a co-4th favorite is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I mean, if his odds were where they should be, like about between 30 and 40 to 1, then it would make a lot of sense to be like, well, he's too talented. Sort of like last week when I got Thomas at 25 to 1. I mean, come on.
He and Molinari really should be switched on there. Molinari should be the 20 to 1 with Spieth the 33 to 1.
All right, so let's now go into our final pick, alternate long shots. Jeff, you have Cantlay as your top long shot play. So we have a lot more to choose from in the secondary long shots than we did with the alternate top picks. So a lot of interesting long shot possibilities left out there. Jeff, who are you going to go with?
Yeah, definitely a number of intriguing names.
Who are you deciding on?
Who am I deciding between?
Yep.
Some of the guys that we've already talked about before in the segment with Brady, Kyle Stanley, as much as this may not be his ballpark, he's playing really well right now. Alex Noren, I think, is a bigger stage guy. Webb Simpson surprises me that he's at 66 to 1 and not maybe a 45 to 1 just inside the long shot or just outside the long shot category. Louis Oosthuizen, he was runner-up last year. So those are the guys that I've been kind of jumping back and forth between as we've been talking. I'm gonna take Alex Noren. I think of that group. And Webb Simpson obviously has played well on a big stage, but I like what Alex Noren has been doing in getting adjusted to his first bi-coastal season or bi-continental season. And maybe in this case, again, first-time major winners, he kind of fits the profile.
Yeah, he is definitely looking for his breakthrough win. And not a bad idea with one of the top players left on the board in the long shot category, Alex Noren at 55 to 1. All right, I am then going to. I'm going to go to my choice is going to come down to a couple of 100 to 1 shots that I'm a little bit surprised they're both 100 to 1, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take Mickelson at 100 to 1. It was down to Mickelson and Poulter. And I know Poulter is playing a little bit better after the performance last week, but I was a little bit concerned with Sunday. And we're going to get into Ryder Cup in a second, but we all knew even last week Poulter was going to get picked as a captain's pick anyway. And I don't know, it seemed like maybe he celebrated on Saturday night or something like that after his performance leading into Sunday. Like, okay, I'm definitely in now because he just didn't have it on Sunday. But I'm going to take Phil. And he definitely looks loose. That's for sure. So I don't think we have to worry about him feeling any pressure. But we know his game is definitely off a little bit. So maybe he can just get off to a good start. And 100 to 1 is a big number for Phil Mickelson. I don't remember the last time we had Phil Mickelson at 100 to 1. Okay, Joel, you are next as far as your long shot. By the way, who would you go with long shots, Cantlay or Noren?
Definitely Cantlay. He's just coming in better. I think he's got top 15s. I want to say in 4 of his past 5. I know the experience isn't quite there, but neither of them have sparkling major records yet. Cantlay's someone. I'm definitely higher on him between those two.
Okay, Joel, your alternate long shot to Xander Schauffele is?
Well, on Pro Golf Weekly, I got a new column out this week, a best bets column, where I list my favorites, my best long shot values, and the ones I feel are overvalued. Of the 5 players I went into for best long shot values, 4 of them are still sitting there for me. And
who are they?
Well, Schauffele was one of them. The second one I'm really tempted by is Bryson DeChambeau. Really tempted by there, but I'm going to go with another 100 to 1 odd. People have noticed Keegan Bradley is actually starting to putt okay. I know you got these big greens. You want guys that can be able to putt. But he's all of a sudden he's been getting positive strokes gained putting, and I think it may not even matter anyway because he's first on tour in total driving. He's first on approach to the green and 4th in proximity. He might not have a lot of situations where he's going to have a 60-foot birdie putt that turns into a bogey later on. He's put out some really low numbers lately. At 100 to 1, I think he's a really good fit here, and I like him a lot.
All right, Keegan Bradley, 2-time PGA champion. Can you say that? We will find out. Yeah. All right, 100 to 1 shot. Who would you go with then, Jeff? Keegan Bradley or Phil Mickelson?
Right now, I've noticed Bradley as well, and maybe I didn't mention him in that group, but I have noticed him. And there are some of us that wonder, is this kind of the renaissance of Keegan Bradley? Has he found enough in the putting game that he doesn't have to put too much pressure on his ball striking? We know that he's a gritty player. He's an emotional player. He not only does he have the PGA Championship victory from 2011, he won the WGC Bridgestone a year later in 2012 and came from way off the pace to chase down Jim Furyk. So he's got the grit. He just had to find a putter that was legal.
Well, the thing with Bradley though is it's been so long since he's even been in contention on a Sunday and you throw in a major, and you do have to wonder if he continues to play, if he ups his game even more over the first 2 days, gets himself in contention over the weekend. How will he handle that? That is something to keep an eye on. But he is a big number at 100 to 1, so why not throw a couple of bucks then on Keegan Bradley? All right, so other players of note. Let's talk about Tiger. Again, didn't play well at the Bridgestone, a place where he's played well before. Got off to a good start, but just kind of fell apart on Sunday. Other players did too, as we mentioned. But of course, when Tiger does it, it'll make bigger news, Joel. So I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know what to think. I mean, anything that has anybody gotten anything out of Tiger and what he has commented on of why he might not have played so well at Bridgestone and how that might affect him this week?
He was pretty laconic about it. He just said flat out that he sucked. He seems healthy at least. I'm sure there's a lot of mental issues there. It's pretty crazy that someone with 79 victories has to learn how to win all over again. We kind of see that lately. He gets into contention and he kind of psychs himself out. I guess he's relearning that. And, I could see him putting together 4 good rounds like he nearly did at the Open by just I just can't. I just don't have enough trust in him right now.
Well, look, he's back to where he was odds-wise at the Open Championship, pretty much. So, this is the player he's going to be, Jeff. You know, he didn't play over the weekend. Well, a lot of good players didn't play well over the weekend last week, and they were all top players. I mean, Tiger barely made the cut of this tournament, the best top 50 in the world, etc. And so,
actually, he was tied for 10th at the midway point.
Sure.
After 66, 68, and then just I keep hammering on it, but I really do believe this is as much the issue as anything. When he gets himself in contention to win, he almost wants it too much because it's the elephant in the room. It's the cloud that continues to hang over his comeback. When is he going to win again? And when you've won 79 times, I think there is still a part of him that thinks, okay, it's going to kick in. It hasn't kicked in since he was 32, and he's now 42. And in fact, we all talk about his 14 wins. Well, the last time he was really, and we'll throw Carnoustie out for a second, but before that, the only time that he was really in contention in a major was 2009 at this PGA Championship when it was at Hazeltine. And all of a sudden, the armor fell off because he was out-dueled on the back nine of Hazeltine by Y.E. Yang.
Yeah.
And I think in amongst everything that came after the PGA Championship, the sex scandal, the divorce, all of that, we forget that Y.E. Yang was the guy that actually brought down Tiger Woods on a Sunday back nine duel, and we'd never seen that before. And then when you throw in the scandal, the divorce, the injury, the back surgery, more injury, another surgery, and now he's playing very well. Being top 50 in the world is nothing to be all that unhappy about, except for the fact that we know where he's been. But he plays reasonably well. If he gets hot, he'll be in contention. And then he's got to convince himself that it's not as big a deal as we're all making it out to be. And he does not have the ability that he had in the mid-2000s to seemingly will the ball into the hole. There's a lot of scar tissue there, physically and mentally.
All right. Well, at 28-20 is definitely a better option to throw a couple of bucks on him. What the heck? Just in case, than he would be where he was last week at 14-1, and he is right now playing well enough that he might be able to put it all together. I mean, look, I'll tell you right now, I would definitely, no offense to your pick, Joel, but I would definitely take Tiger over Jordan Spieth.
I can definitely see that viewpoint.
Who would you do, Jeff?
I think part of it's probably because I had Tiger last week, and he kind of, after the first couple rounds, Tiger was my only one that was doing good, and then all of a sudden, Thorborn Olsen and DJ just showed up late after doing nothing early on. I couldn't believe that Tiger finished behind them.
Jeff, who would you go with, Woods or Spieth?
I actually would probably lean towards Spieth right now, just because I think if Spieth ever finds that trigger, if Spieth finds whatever it was, like he did, at the British last year, all of a sudden everything goes in from everywhere. I think he still has that ability, and he can do it under the heat of Sunday pressure. Tiger's heat of Sunday pressure, I think, is exponential because he's going to put more on himself. Even though Spieth, I'm sure, puts a ton on himself. Tiger, right now, his pattern this year, when he has been in the mix on Sunday, has been to make a critical mistake. And maybe we just haven't seen enough of Spieth in the mix on Sunday right now. But Spieth has had more Sunday success of late than Tiger Woods.
By the way, Y.E. Yang is playing the PGA Championship because he won in Japan. for the first
well,
time.
He's also part of that past champions group that gets to come back for 10 years.
Where did he when because he won, was the win, his recent win, the first win since the PGA Championship? Do you know? I know it's been many years since Y.E. Yang won. So I wonder if that was his last win, the PGA Championship. Again, winning in Japan. What was it? This year, I think, right? Did he win in Japan? Or was it late last season? I forget. Anyway.
You know, he does have a win this season, and he had 2 wins in 2010. So
okay.
there were 2 wins following that PGA Championship.
All right, so other long shots that were that are definitely on my mind, guys that I've already decided I'll throw a buck or two on. Again, I mentioned Ian Poulter. Why not? He played really well last week. He's trending in the right direction. Also, and here's a guy looking for his first major. So I think he's a bargain at 100 to 1. So I would definitely consider Ian Poulter. We've mentioned Stanley before at 80 to 1. The only thing with Stanley, and we've talked about that already, is he has not performed well on the biggest of stages. So that's an issue. But he is down to 80 to 1 now. Contrary, Charlie Hoffman has played better in bigger events than the smaller events. And that's why not? Charlie Hoffman, throw a buck on him at 100 to 1. He has 3 top 20s this year in the 3 majors. Kevin Chappell was definitely somebody that's worth a buck. 6th at the Open Championship. Luke List. Why not Luke List? He's sitting there ranked 47th in the world. Not actually, that's pretty close to the number that Keegan Bradley won in 2006. Excuse me, Jimmy Walker in 2016 when he was 48th. Ryan Moore and Brandt Snedeker also worth a buck for me. Snedeker is starting to play better. He's got 3 top 10s in his last 6, including the 8th in his last event in Canada. And Ryan Moore is coming up to 12th at the Open Championship. And he's just a guy that I'm thinking he might have another pretty decent tournament this week. Joel, other long shots that you were considering?
Well, Stanley's definitely one. You mentioned that he hasn't done well in the big stages, but he's got 3 top 5s in WGC events this year. So maybe that's changing a little bit. I know the majors are a little different, but the fields are pretty comparable, even though they're a little more limited. But
39th at the Open, which was his best. He missed a cut at the U.S. Open, 52nd at the Masters. So maybe we'll keep an eye on Kyle Stanley at the HSBC.
Yeah, just top 5 there last year. Or that might be the one he did. I don't remember which one it was. So there was a lot of good long shots I was looking at. I mean, Louis Oosthuizen you always have to consider in these circumstances. I was looking really closely. I know he's been an enormous disappointment this year. But I'm starting to talk myself into Thomas Pieters a little bit. He's looking a little better lately. He had a 64-66 weekend at the Scottish Open to finish 6th. He's got a number of top 20 finishes. Even at the Open, he was par or better in 3 of the 4 rounds. He has that penchant for the big stage, 150 to 1 odds, and he's got the length to handle there too. There's 2 guys there I like at 200. Eddie Pepperell, he's really hot lately. He doesn't take himself too seriously, but he keeps it in the fairway. He went off a really big hot streak late in 2017, and he may be starting that again. And Hao Tong Lee is just very, kind of the ice in the veins type. I don't know if he can avoid that big number, but his talent and what he's shown in a number of these European events definitely worth 200 to 1 odds to me.
All right. And, by the way, another player that just a gut feeling that he's going to play well for a big long shot. I figure I'll throw a buck on Billy Horschel. Jeff, other long shots for you?
Well, Joel mentioned the 2 that were kind of at the top of my list. Oosthuizen, don't forget, he was one of those runner-ups behind Justin Thomas at Quail Hollow last year. And he's a guy that seems to play well on big stages. I don't know if either of you realize he has 4 major runner-ups in his career.
Yeah,
he's got 1 major, but he's also been runner-up 4 times. So he's been within arm's length on 4 other occasions.
And it's in
like
each of the
Joel,
4 too.
Thomas Peters is kind of somebody who has started to come on. I don't know if it does him any good in terms of making a Ryder Cup push or anything like that, but all of a sudden sometimes he just shows up. Hi, Thomas.
I think, what were you saying, Joel?
I'll just say, Newshaven, those 4 runner-ups is in 1 in each one. So he can play anywhere.
Yeah, I think with Oosthuizen, though, let's keep in mind we talked about this at another show, but he's never won on U.S. soil, which is kind of interesting, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of wins. How many wins does he have total? He's got 11, right? 11 wins, but nothing on U.S. soil. So even though he's got the runner-ups and all that other stuff, in the major, the Open Championship in 2010, he hasn't been able to put it together in the U.S. And he's only won once since 2014. But he has played better than Charles Schwartzel, another fellow South African. Okay, which is surprising, really. These guys, I mean, just a few years ago, we would have thought that both of these guys, Schwartzel and Oosthuizen, by now would be top 10 players. And, it's kind of funny that Oosthuizen, even though he's only won once since 2014, has finished 18th, 26th, and 23rd in the rankings the last 3 years. So how does he do that? Well, with what has he got? You mentioned the runner-ups. He's got 7 runner-ups since 2014. Okay, let's get into Ryder Cup talk. And we already talked about it last week. So have you changed your mind at all, Joel? Joel, your captain's picks were Mickelson, Schauffele, and Tiger. Those were your 3 out of 4. And they were my picks were Mickelson, Kuchar, and Tiger. Jeff's Mickelson, Kuchar, and Tiger. So we were all pretty close. But are you going to stick, Joel, with Mickelson, Schauffele, and Tiger? That's 3 out of those 4 picks.
That's what I would do. I think the team will have enough experience and leadership. I don't think they need all 3 of those between Mickelson, Woods, and Kuchar. And Kuchar he's been very unimpressive to me lately. Schauffele, he's someone that can really step up on the big stage. He can add some young blood to the team. I would really like to see him or DeChambeau make. I like Schauffele better just because I think that whole team dynamic's going to work a little better there. But DeChambeau, he's an exciting young player too. I mean, he could end up being a Patrick Reed type. It wouldn't shock me if he did.
He is going to. When's this pick made, Jeff? Again?
Well, this is the 8 automatic qualifiers lock in Sunday night, or in the case of weather, Monday morning. So we will know the first 8 on the U.S. team by Monday, and then we will get 3 weeks through Labor Day, so 2 playoff events plus Wyndham next week, for Jim Furyk to kind of sort out what he wants to do with his first 3 captains.
Okay,
so
there's still a lot
8
of time.
automatics. Yeah, then 3, and then 1 at the end. All right,
and look, it is wide open because and especially forget it if a Patrick Cantlay, a Tony Finau, maybe even a Kyle Stanley now that he's 14th, or a DeChambeau. These guys go out and win again, and forget it if they win the PGA Championship. Would you guys agree that if one of those guys I just named wins the PGA Championship, they're in the Ryder Cup?
Yes, because they will qualify on points. The way that the point system works is that all points at the PGA Championship and all majors are worth 1.5 times what a normal point would, and it's based on 1 point per $1,000 in winnings. So this week at the PGA, it's 1.5 points per $1,000 in whatever you earn at Bellread.
Who's locked in?
The top 4 are locked in right now.
Just the top 4.
Yeah, just DJ, Koepka, Thomas, and Reed. Bubba Watson, I would imagine at this point.
So really, Webb Simpson's the only guy. Nah, Speed's going to get in, and Ricky's going to get in. In this field, they're going to get in.
Yeah.
So it's up to Simpson to because if Simpson gets knocked out, Well, you see, if Simpson, as long as Simpson just continues to do what he's doing, and one of these other players we just mentioned qualifies by winning the PGA Championship, Simpson is definitely going to get in. He's going to be a captain's pick. And then that's going to take a captain's pick away from some of the other players we talked about. Or maybe he's the fourth guy out of the list, out of the other three we talked about. But then how about winning one of the events then? Let's say whatever, Simpson's in after this week. And one of those players, DeChambeau, Schauffele, Finau, Stanley, Cantlay, they win once before the pick is made. Are they in?
Well, it depends if the win is at one of those two FedEx Cup playoff events.
Well, let's not talk about that other thing. Yeah.
The Wyndham?
Yeah. Let's talk about the FedEx Cup playoff.
It seems like the kind of event Bryson DeChambeau could show up and destroy everyone. But yeah, we've seen that recently. That recent form matters. It got Ryan Moore in a few years ago, and he paid off.
Okay.
I think we'll see how far up Cantlay can jump. I think he would be great on the team. It might be hard to rationalize him if for some reason he has a really poor week and doesn't get up any higher for them the 25th. But yeah, I think that would be a win in a FedEx Cup event would be huge.
All right, and DeChambeau, because he does have time, he's going to have a few more events to go, even though he's still ninth. Jeff, I still, especially after not playing didn't get off to a good start last week. Maybe the residual carryover from the sour performance the week before. He's got to change all that. Now, he played better over the weekend, and that's nice, but still, the result number wasn't good in a WGC, so he's got to pick things up. He's got to make it tough on Jim Furyk to take him, and he's got to try and stay as close to that ninth position as possible to almost force him to take him, because if it comes down to a flip of the coin for any reason, DeChambeau is not going to get the benefit of the doubt. He's just not.
Probably not. That being said, in most captain's pick situations, when you've got multiple picks, and by that I mean more than two, it always seems like the guy right under the cut line always winds up getting in. So in this case, even if DeChambeau holds ninth, I think he will at the very least get consideration right down to the wire, because he's played consistently enough. He's got 2 wins in the last 14 months.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, he's not playing all that differently from the guys around him. Simpson earned 8 points more than DeChambeau last week. Mickelson earned 8 points more than DeChambeau last week. DeChambeau actually earned a lot more points than Xander Schauffele last week. And it might be interesting, just if this is something that the listeners want to keep in mind. I did the math. If Bryson DeChambeau comes away $32,700 ahead of Webb Simpson this week, just this week's earnings, 32.7, he will jump Webb Simpson in the standings.
Okay. Well, you know what? If you can play better than Webb Simpson, which is what it's going to take with that number at the PGA Championship, with that on the line, and they know it's on the line, then good for him. Then you know what? You've proven your mettle, and by all means, you deserve it. You know what would be a good homework assignment, because we'll be talking about this for the next few weeks. I'd like to see some of the most recent picks where the players were ranked, the captain's picks. So we can go ahead and study the past picks and how those captains, and maybe why are those captains, and I'm sure there might even be some controversial ones in there over the last several years. Well, the last, say, 2 or 3 Ryder Cups, something like that. That would be a good homework assignment for you guys, and we could talk about it in the coming weeks. And on the European side, we've got the guys that are in now are in. Molinari, Rose, Hatton, Fleetwood, Norn, McIlroy, Rahm. We know they're going to be part of the 7, same as the USA. So you've got KC8, which he probably looks pretty good there, and he's going to get in. I mean, he'll get a captain's pick anyway. Olesen, okay, if he continues to play well, he's starting to now. The more he plays like this, the more he becomes a safe pick. But remember, we talked last week about Poulter and Garcia being potential locks, even though they were way back in the standings. But they've now moved up, especially Poulter is now 10th. And we already know he's in now for sure. And even Garcia's got to be in now because he's 12th. So, and then Stenson's the one that could be interesting because of the injury situation, if he doesn't play well again this week. And if that continues, then maybe that is something that makes things a little bit more unsure. But I think you guys would have to agree with me that Casey, Poulter, Garcia are going to get in. Right, Joel?
I'm seeing Casey at 34th.
Yeah, that thing we talked about last time is all screwed up.
Oh, yeah.
You got to go to the world rankings.
But remember that 4 from the European list and 4 then that haven't already been taken from the world points list, and Casey is kind of the outlier there because he has almost no European points, but he sits there number 8 in world points, and honestly, he's going to be the guy on the bubble the next 3 weeks. They're going to have, or 4 weeks, they have 4 more weeks to earn points before their top 8 lock in. And right now, the way Torbjorn Olesen is playing, he's going to put a lot of heat on Casey because he could either pass Casey directly in the world points listings, or he could play well enough to displace, right now it's Tommy Fleetwood in the European points listings, but then Fleetwood would drop into the world points pool, and he's well ahead of Casey in the world points pool. So no matter which way you go with that, Casey would be odd man out if there were to be a change.
Yeah, even though he'll still get in. He'll get a captain's pick. So, and that means that the captain's pick gets taken away from one of the other players. So Olesen becomes a little bit more difficult of a captain's pick. But if he steals the pick away, then all of a sudden you got Garcia, Poulter, Casey. Maybe it's done. Maybe, especially if Stenson's gets back into gear, which Joel hopes this week, then maybe it's Stenson, Garcia, Poulter, Casey as your captain's picks, and it's that simple.
Don't forget Pat Burrell either. He's coming on really good lately.
Yeah, and there were interesting comments today by Thomas Bjorn, who basically laid it out for Sergio Garcia. He needs to see better results of late from Sergio Garcia. So that's an indicator that Garcia is anything but automatic. And honestly,
I think
right.
I think we would all agree if Garcia winds up missing 2 more cuts, and doesn't even crack the top 35 again before the picks are made, that he's in a lot of trouble. I think we all agree on that. Will that happen? Well, I think we kind of all doubt that at this time, but it could happen. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So sure, we can see that happen. That's why I mentioned Stenson too. It could that stuff could happen. If everything happens the way we think it should happen regarding history of these players and how talented they are, then we would probably see Stenson, Garcia, Poulter, Casey, Olesen as those last 5. I mean, with Olesen being the one, obviously, that has to continue to play well. Joel?
Probably so.
Were you saying something?
Oh, yeah. I think what's going to carry some weight, too, is that I mentioned this last week, Rafa Cabrera-Bello was really good at the Ryder Cup last year. That's going to have to play into. I know he hasn't been as great lately, but he's got the results over.
Well, who would you take if, let's say, something does happen, and let's say Olesen makes it in, and we know Casey's going to get a pick and Poulter is going to get a pick, but there's a couple more picks off. Well, let's say Stenson's in too, and it's down, but Garcia plays poorly. Garcia or Stenson. Let's say one of the two is out. Then all of a sudden it's between guys like Cabrera-Bello, you mentioned Joel, Fitzpatrick, Pepperell, you mentioned Joel, Russell Knox. I don't know if you want to throw anyone else in there. So who would you lean with right now if there was an opening?
Probably Cabrera-Bello, just on what we've seen from him in this format. Sergio, I don't trust him right now. Pat Burrell.
No, Sergio would be out of the equation.
And it'll be interesting to see if Pat Burrell can put his third consecutive great start out there this week. That would make it difficult. Jeff and I both mentioned Peters. He's probably, I mean, he has to probably do something incredible to have any say in this thing right now. But they're going to root for him to make it there again.
Jeff, who would you go with if one of those spots was open?
I was impressed with what Cabrera Bello did at Hazeltine last year, 2 years ago, and so I think that Bjorn would take that into consideration. He's been on the stage, he's performed reasonably well. Fitzpatrick was on the stage at Hazeltine. He did not perform all that well. I think that works against him. So I think in a situation where they may need a little bit more consistency, plus he would make a great partner, I think, for John Rahm. Cabrera Bello would be the guy that I would put at the top of that list.
All right, that will wrap it up. Joel, appreciate it. We are going to be back on Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So we are going to preview round 3 with updated odds and picks and trends. So you guys got to find those PGA Championship come-from-behind trends and how much they exist or not, or hold on to the lead trends. So that'll be coming up this weekend on Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So, Joel, enjoy the golf for the next several days starting on Thursday, and we'll talk to you on Saturday morning.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. All right. And we also want to thank Brady Cannon, of course, from Covers.com for joining us earlier in the program. And we are going, again, so we're going to be back this weekend. And then, so next week's the Wyndham, right?
The Wyndham, that's the final regular season event. So you'll probably see Henrik Stenson there, unless his elbow's really bothering him, because he is the defending champion. He needed that event last year to solidify his position in the playoffs. But I would say that 80% of that field is going to be guys from 90 on down in the FedEx Cup rankings. And you will see some recognizable names in there. Speaking of Sergio Garcia, he needs to actually pick up FedEx Cup points to get into the playoffs. And that may be something that is going to weigh on Thomas Bjorn's decision as well. But pretty much you're going to get guys that love the event or recent champions. Patrick Reed typically plays. Brandt Snedeker typically plays. Again, Stenson's defending champion, but 80% of your field is going to be guys from 90 on down in the FedEx Cup standings because they need it.
Well, that'll be a primary focus next week. Obviously, we'll go over the FedEx Cup standings, and we'll let you know what it's going to take for a lot of those players on the bubble to get in, and some of those players on the inside, what they have to do to hold on to those spots. Of course, we'll wrap up the PGA Championship, anything important from that event, and much more next week on Prime Sports Golf's Tuesday edition. But we'll be back on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern for third round coverage of the PGA Championship here on Prime Sports Golf. For Brady Cannon, for Jeff Shane, for Joel Cook, I'm Greg DePalma. No more programming for Prime Sports Network today, but we're back tomorrow. We have 2 shows with the Our-Lads Football Network, actually interviews. We're going to interview Phil Kornbluth for the Clemson Tigers and their upcoming football season, and then Ryan Abraham for the USC Trojans. That'll be tomorrow, 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock Eastern on the Our-Lads Football Network. We'll see you on Saturday, everybody. Enjoy the golf.